Okay, so there has been a lot of discussion around Senate Bill 712, or now it's officially known as Leno's Law, because of the tremendous weight that classic car collector Jay Leno has put behind this bill. The Specialty Equipment Market Association, or SEMA, as it's more popularly known, is also supporting SB 712, which was introduced by Senator Sharon Grove, who represents Senate District 12, which covers sort of east of Bakersfield and Fresno. There's also a companion legislation over in the Assembly. AB 1369 would do the exact same thing. It would exempt any motor vehicle that is 30 years or older from a smog check, and this is being authored by Assemblymember Wallace. But for the purposes of this video, we're just going to focus on Leno's Law, which is SB 712. So in this video, I'd like to go over a little bit more about what SB 712 will do, what it won't do, and what you can do about it. So make sure to stay tuned all the way to the end so you can find out how you can make sure that your voice is heard. All right, so let's just start off with what Senate Bill 712 does. So the current law as it exists, as everybody in California already knows, a classic car that is 1975 and older is exempt from having to get a biannual smog check. Now, there is also a special section that for classic cars or collector cars that were 35 years older but newer than 1976, they were actually eligible for an abbreviated smog inspection at the referee. So the referee would perform a sniffer test, a functional test of the gas cap, and then do a visual check for any fuel leaks. Again, this abbreviated smog check would be performed by a bar referee, Bureau of Automotive Repair referee, not your average smog shop. This smog check, even though it's abbreviated, still needs to be performed every other year. So it's not like you can register a car approved as a collector car and then never have to do smog again. You still had to go through the smog check. So on to SB 712, when it was originally introduced, it would remove the requirement of having an abbreviated smog check for all qualified classic cars that were 35 years or older. However, the eligibility to qualify as a classic car would add the requirement of the vehicle being insured as a collector car, not as a daily driver. So I believe going through Grundy or Haggerty would have qualified. Now, the latest amendment that just came out on March 24th just removed this requirement. So what the bill simply does, what SB 712 is proposing, is to just eliminate smog checks for any collector car that is 35 years or older. A collector car or collector motor vehicle is defined as a motor vehicle owned by a collector as defined in subdivision A of section 505. I'll put the link to that in the description below. And in order to qualify as a collector car, the motor vehicle is used primarily in shows, parades, charitable functions, and historical exhibitions for display, maintenance, and preservation, and is not used primarily for transportation. So again, in order to be considered a classic car, it cannot be your daily driver. And if we dig further into the law, what a collector is considered, because it says a motor vehicle owned by a collector, the law defines a collector as the owner of one or more vehicles described in section 5004, or of one or more special interest vehicles as defined in this same article, who collects, purchases, acquires, trades, or disposes of vehicles or parts thereof for his or her own use in order to preserve, restore, and maintain the vehicle for hobby or historical purposes. So where does the bill stand now? Well, each law that's proposed in California goes through this same process. So let me just walk you through the process. So the bill is currently in the Senate Committee on Transportation. It's going to require a majority vote by the committee members for this to advance. Currently, the makeup of the committee, 14 of them are Democrats, 4 of them are Republicans. So if they vote along party lines, this bill is just going to die in committee. So you hear that phrase a lot, the bill died in committee, which means it would die in the Committee of Transportation. However, in this latest amendment that came out on March 24th, I noticed that the committee chair, Senator David Cortese, is now listed as a co-author along with Senator Grove. And the committee vice chair, Tony Strickland, is also a co-author. So now you have the chair and the vice chair co-authoring the bill with Senator Grove. The interesting thing is that Chair Cortese is a Democrat and Strickland is a Republican. So I think it's a really good sign that the chair of the committee supports the bill. It really kind of increases the chances that it'll pass through their own committee. Now, this isn't the first time that the Assembly has tried to pass a smog exemption bill. Assemblymember Volpel tried to pass it in 2021 with AB 220. They also tried to pass it in 2019 with AB 210, but it was held in the Assembly Transportation Committee. Senator Gaines tried in 2016 with SB 1239, but it was sent to the inactive file where the bill died. Then Senator LaMaffa tried it in 2012 with SB 1224, but it failed to get out of the Senate Transportation and Housing Committee. So again, this has been tried before. I wouldn't get our hopes up too high given the previous history of this type of legislation, but it does give me hope that the chair and the vice chair are now co-authors. I also noticed that Senator Tim Grayson is on the Senate Transportation Committee. Senator Grayson is a car guy, and he even won the Stephen B. McDonald Legislator of the Year Award at the 2019 SEMA show back when he was still an assembly member. So all this to say, I think it's got a good chance of getting out of the Senate Transportation Committee. So even if the bill passes the Senate Transportation Committee, it will still need to pass through the Senate Budget and Fiscal Review Committee because this is a fiscal policy. This would change the revenues that were coming into the state of California through the smog checks. It doesn't appear that the bill will need to go through the Senate Appropriations Committee, which is really good because insiders call the Appropriations Committee the committee where bills go to die. But this second committee, the Budget and Fiscal Review Committee, is an extra hurdle for the bill to cross. So if the bill passes both the Senate Transportation Committee and the Senate Budget Committee, then the full Senate will vote on the bill. And again, each committee needs to pass by a majority vote, does not need 2/3 of a vote. If it passes onto the full Senate, all senators get to vote on. You need a majority of votes there. If it passes there, then it goes over to the Assembly, and then the process repeats itself. So it's most likely going to first go to the Assembly Transportation Committee, and if they hear the bill and then they pass it, then it'll go on to the Assembly Budget Committee. They hear it and they pass it, and it passes through both committees again. The Assembly Transportation Committee and the Senate Budget Committee goes to the full Assembly, and if they pass it, then the bill goes to the governor, and at that point, he can either choose to sign the bill or he can veto the bill, and he vetoes it. I think that bill is done. So you can see there are multiple off-ramps to this bill. It's got a lot of committees to go through before it gets signed into law. But let's focus on getting the bill through the Senate Transportation Committee first. Let me just give you some key deadlines. They have until May 2nd to pass the bill out of the Transportation Committee and get it over to the Senate Budget Committee, or the bill dies. The Senate Transportation Committee could also choose to place the bill in suspense or make it inactive. Basically means they table the bill and then make it a 2-year bill, meaning the bill stays alive until next year when they come back into their legislative session from their winter recess, and then they start the process over again. The bill gets another chance to make it out of the Senate Transportation Committee. So if it passes the Senate Transportation Committee and goes to the Senate Fiscal Committee, they have until May 23rd to pass the bill out of this committee, out of the Senate Budget Committee, and go to the full Senate. Once it's in the Senate, they have until June 6th to pass the bill and get it over to the Assembly. Otherwise, it's dead in the Senate. So behind the scenes, I think the legislature is really negotiating all the different amendments. So here's the important part. This is what you can do. You can call, you can write your local assembly member, your local state senator, let them know that you support Leno's law, and you can also submit a support letter to the Senate Transportation Committee. I'll also include a link to the support letter portal where you would submit your support letter. I drafted up a template for a support letter, so all you have to do is cut and paste the description below and stick it in a Word document, fill in some of the blanks, and then you can submit your support letter. And then the final thing that you can do is on the day of the Senate transportation hearing, you can show up and voice your support for the bill. The hearing is currently scheduled for April 8th at 1:30 p.m. at 1021 O Street in room 1200. So if you're really passionate about this, make sure you write the letter, make sure you make the call, and if you can, show up on April 8th at the Senate Transportation Committee hearing and let them know that you support Leno's Law, SB 712. I think there's going to be a lot more news on this bill, so I will keep you all updated, and fingers crossed that it makes it all the way to the checkered flag.
If you're enjoying these videos, please consider subscribing to the channel and to the newsletter using the links below. We'll share more tool buying tips, classic car and classic motorcycle project finds, some motorsport news, and maybe a wrenching tip or two.